It is no secret that Indonesia has an exceptional tourism potential for local and global visitors alike. Among foreign nationals is Sasha Stevenson, who hails from Canada. Sasha is married to a man from Bandung and since actively shared her daily life during her time in Indonesia.
Dan banyak orang yang nge-like.
Sasha has more than 1 million subscribers on her YouTube channel.
Hai semua, apa kabar kamu? Aku lagi sama teman aku Lam.
Hailing from Brazil, Felipe Valdez, the 28-year-old, went viral in 2015 because of his love for Indonesia. He's also been actively sharing his stories regarding his love towards Indonesia. His YouTube channel has reached more than 742,000 followers. Not only Sasha and Felipe, Elisebeth Doty is also among the foreign nationals who has expressed her love about Indonesia. By mastering Bahasa Indonesia, Elisabeth participated in the first language competition held by the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia in Washington, D.C. in 2019, in which she won for the paper and poetry category. She thinks by mastering the Indonesian language, she can get a career development related to the Indonesian language later on. Let's get to know about Elisebeth Doty only on the C Morning Show.
Welcome back to the C Morning Show here on C Today. Personally, every morning I wake up, I feel very proud to be an Indonesian because we're so rich in culture, not just in our culture, but in culinary delights, fashion, and things of that sort. There's just so many to list.
Exactly. Indonesian charm makes many foreigners fall in love with our country. And now we are connected with Elisebeth Doty, who won the virtual Indonesian Language Competition held by the Indonesian Embassy in the Washington, D.C. And let's have a fun talk with Lizzie today. Good morning, Lizzie.
Morning, Lizzie.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Great to hear from you. Thank you for joining us. I guess it's evening where you are right now, so good evening. It's obviously morning here right now. Just a quick question before we get into our question. Could you give us an example, a showcase of your Bahasa Indonesia skills, please?
Sure thing. I have a small poem for you this morning. It's called the C Morning Show.
Awesome.
Pagi-pagi bangun. Pagi-pagi bangun, menguap dan menyeruput kopi, menyalakan TV dalam ruang sepi. Tiba-tiba berwarna-warni dengan suara dan gambar dan cerita. Semua jenis berita. Pas bangun pagi-pagi tidak usah menderita, tersenyum dan tertawa. Mulai hari dengan C Morning Show pasti istimewa.
Memulai hari dengan C Morning Show pasti istimewa.
Everything that they pretty much covered everything that we do on the show. You know, you get up in the morning, you have a sip of coffee, you turn it on, and all
Tidak usah menderita tadi.
That's right. Thank you so much for that, Lizzie. That certainly brightened up our morning, indeed. Now, why Bahasa Indonesia? Why did you choose this as a language for you to become an expert in? And did you, prior to learning our language, were you already into poetry? Because it's not just the one thing you're skilled at. You seem very greatly skilled in both.
Well, first of all, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Indonesian, for me, I would say it has a deep personal connection. I actually spent a lot of my childhood growing up in Kalimantan, in two cities, in Samarinda and Banjarmasin. And so growing up, I spoke Indonesian colloquially, but it wasn't until undergrad in University of Wisconsin-Madison that I started studying it formally again and realized, there are so many opportunities with studying Indonesian in the US. It's a critically understudied language still, but as to poetry, I definitely have a personal interest in poetry from beforehand as well, but just kind of a hobby, not an expert in any matter, but yeah.
Okay, and from August 2019 to March 2020, you joined a scholarship program in Malang and Yogyakarta. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's right. So I was awarded the opportunity to return to Indonesia for the first time since I was about 13. I was granted a David L. Boren National Security Education Program scholarship, and I joined the IFLI program to intensively study Indonesian language and culture throughout that time. So see from the photos, those are a lot of friends from the BIPA program at Universitas Negeri Malang, which was in my first semester. I had a lot of fun learning Indonesian intensively there. And then in the second semester, I moved on to Yogyakarta, where I studied at Sanata Dharma, as well as had an internship with UGM, actually for their Wildlife Conservation Center. So I had a very fulfilling experience going back and learned a lot.
Lizzie, I can relate a little bit because in the early 2000s, I moved as an Indonesian. I had just moved here for the first time in my adult life, and I found certain things about the language quite easy to understand. For example, there are no tenses, so we don't have to say I ate, I will eat, and I am eating. You just say I eat for any particular point in time. However, there is a lot to be learned and memorized when it comes to vocabulary. There's a much larger vocabulary for everything. What are some of the challenges that you encountered? Because you not only had to learn, I had it easy. I only learned it from a conversational point of view for the first few years, and then later on I learned more in depth about the language. But you actually had to learn it in your studies as well. So what are some of the challenges that you encountered in the early going?
I would say in the early going, it definitely was kind of changing registers. That's also something that I was not as familiar with, since English doesn't have the more formal register and then the more informal register. So that's a key part of Indonesian. But it is true the Roman alphabet also helps a lot for native English speakers to kind of latch on quickly in that beginning part. And then in the end part, really have to try to focus on memorization and vocabulary use. So I would say that was difficult. Also, being abroad this past year in Indonesia, I realized that a lot of slang was actually in Japanese. So it wasn't something that I ended up having an opportunity to learn while I was there, but it just showcased how Indonesian is really, it's not just Indonesian, it blends with all of the languages in whatever region you're in at the time. Yeah.
Okay. And while you were in Malang in Yogyakarta, what did you get in terms of culture and language? I also heard that you joined a batik and dance class there.
I did actually join a batik dance, my extracurriculars. I have a little example batik that I made while I was in the class.
That? Wow.
Ah, beautiful.
I made it, yeah. It's not quite traditional, but it's something though. It was really fun. I enjoyed learning batik a lot. And the dance was difficult. I am not a dancer, but it was amazing. But besides that, I think from my time in Malang and Yogyakarta, I really also just could appreciate my relationship that I formed there and got to know their life there more, as well as the surrounding nature. I'm a big nature lover. I loved going to waterfalls and those spots that are so key in Indonesia, and just you can't find them anywhere else.
You were in the right place if you like waterfalls and hiking and things of that sort. Now, one more thing before we move on to this next little challenge we want you to give us. Tell us about the competition. Obviously, it was held in by the Indonesian Embassy in Washington, D.C. It was a 2020 virtual Indonesian language competition for advanced poetry, writing, and reading. Tell us the process. How did you enter that, and how was the whole process? How was the whole experience?
Yeah, so the competition, I actually had the opportunity to join the competition last year as well, but this year the categories were slightly different. The theme was Indonesia Maju, or the future of Indonesia going forward, and it was commemorating the 75th anniversary of independence of Indonesia. So I decided to join because my Indonesian professor actually at UW-Madison reached out to me and suggested it. I owe a lot to her for my journey with Indonesian. But the competition, there were 7 finalists in the poetry competition. So the theme was, again, Indonesia Maju, but then it was a little open to interpretation. It was judged based on original creativity, relation to the theme, the way you could expressively read the poetry, as well as just kind of general language ability showcased in the poetry as well. So it was a great opportunity to participate and meet people who have an interest in Indonesian from all across the country, and Indonesian people as well tuning in to watch.
How was it judged, just real quick? Was it through things like content, grammar, pronunciation? Was that all taken into consideration?
Yes, it was kind of a whole package as far as judging. So content, pronunciation, delivery, especially with poetry reading, it's the expressive nature of it, but also I think just how to think about the theme in terms of what made Indonesia your Indonesia, because Indonesiaku was actually the sub-theme as well, forgot to mention.
Now, Aubrey and I are thinking about entering a public speaking competition, and we think you would be the right person to try to lead us through this. So we do have your poem here called Pohon Beringin, obviously an original piece by you, and we're going to do a reading together, starting with you, and then we're going to try to follow suit. Try not to make us look too bad today, Lizzie.
That sounds great. Okay, so I'll start. Kemarilah dengan saya ke pohon beringin. Duduklah di bawah tanaman peneduh itu, dan saya akan bercerita tentang apa yang namanya Indonesiaku.
Indonesiaku akan selalu terjelma dalam bentuk sang pohon beringin dengan batang yang bersatu dari banyak seperti bangsa negara itu sendiri, berkumpul di bawah satu kanopi, yaitu bendera merah putih.
Okay, I'm so nervous right now. Here we go. Indonesiaku akan selalu terjelma dalam bentuk sang pohon beringin dengan kulit yang kuat terhadap jalanan waktu yang memakai bebas lukanya dengan bangga. Setiap luka sebagian sejarah akhirnya merdeka.
Indonesiaku akan selalu terjelma dalam bentuk sang pohon beringin dengan akar yang amat mendalam, seakan ingin mendengarkan hati bumi sendiri, membangun landasan atas kebijaksanaan generasi sebelumnya, atas lapisan bumi yang sekalipun basah, kering, berpasir, berbatu, pasti kukuh tak tergoyahkan.
Indonesiaku akan selalu terjelma dalam bentuk sang pohon beringin dengan akar yang bergantung seakan ingin berbisik dengan angin. Jari yang menangkap pecahan mimpi indah tak terlukiskan. Seperti jari para seniman tanah air, tangan-tangan mereka yang terbawa oleh inspirasi ilahi.
Indonesiaku akan selalu terjelma dalam bentuk sang pohon beringin dengan daun-daun yang menari diterangi matahari. Sebuah tarian persembahan bahagia yang menyatu langit dengan bumi. Dan pada malam hari beristirahat tenang, damai karena memahami. Setiap pagi membawa cahaya baru.
Indonesiaku akan selalu terjelma dalam bentuk sang pohon beringin. Dengan dahan yang begitu lebar, menjadi peneduh bagi setiap makhluk. Sebuah kaleidoskop variasi, berbulu, berambut, berwarna-warni, masing-masing mulia, layak dilindungi.
Indonesiaku akan selalu terjelma dalam bentuk sang pohon beringin. Pohon yang dilestarikan, yang melestarikan dengan mata air yang mengalir dan menghidupi sumber kehidupan bagi negara kepulauan.
Inilah ceritaku di bawah sang pohon beringin yang abadi tetapi selalu maju. Seperti apa yang namanya? Indonesiaku. All right.
Wow, that was great.
Honest,
That was
honest
perfect.
opinion. Did we butcher your piece of work here, or what?
That was amazing. That was perfect.
Actually, if you just close your eyes, if
Yeah.
you're viewing this, tuning in, you would have trouble figuring out who is the Indonesian
Yeah.
in this conversation right now. Obviously, amazing that you're able to produce content like this.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one question, though. This is kind of off of our question list here. Obviously, as a foreigner who is so fluent in speaking the local language, what are some of the benefits? Like, we always joke that if we have a foreign friend who can speak Indonesian really well,
Yeah.
if you go to the market, it's so easy for you to get the best prices and things because
Exactly.
when the locals hear somebody, whether it's a foreigner or a local, who can speak the local language really well, right away they won't try to take you for a ride. You'll probably get the best prices. You won't get conned or scammed in any way,
Exactly.
right? Correctly. So what are some of the other benefits of being so fluent in our language?
Yeah, I guess, just kind of the surprise element. I think it's fun to be able to relate to people who had thought, you had no knowledge or no connection to the language or culture, and then just kind of start speaking, and they just are very pleased to be able to converse with you. And I definitely think, you know, in the past I've at marketplaces with bartering, it's always been kind of a shock, and then it ends up going better than expected. Although I'm not great at bartering, to be honest.
But I'm sure it's very well received, by the way.
Yeah. But Lizzie, what are your hopes for the future regarding your mastery of Indonesian language?
So I would have to say that my hopes for the future is I can continue to use Indonesian to enrich U.S. and Indonesia relations, because I think, you know, as I mentioned earlier, Indonesian is still very critically understudied in the United States, even though Indonesia is the fourth most populous nation in the world and the most populous Muslim majority country. And I think, you know, Americans can learn a lot from the culture of Indonesia, from the history of Indonesia. So I want to continue to use Indonesian in my career, whether that's, you know, maybe as a civil servant or a translator. I haven't decided that yet, but I'm looking forward to continuing to use it.
Lizzie, it's been so great talking to you, and we so much appreciate the fact that you've embraced our culture and our language so well, and we hope you continue to stay safe wherever you may be this upcoming year, and continue your mastery of the language. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Lizzie.
You as well. Thank you so much for having me. It's great.